what are your thoughts around that? Because, I mean, that can really be incredibly detrimental to a young person.
I think that the opportunity to assess what your dream job could look like really comes down to understanding that it's not a job that is your dream. It is
Oh, good point.
it
Love
is
that.
the fulfillment of what it is you want to deliver to the world that you can get the most bank
Yeah.
for, right?
I like that. That's such a profound. Every once in a while, you just shock me with your wisdom, and just saying that is such a good. If the dream is not the job, right? That is
Right.
not. I love that you just said that.
Welcome to How You Go There, a podcast that goes beyond traditional success stories to uncover the real strategies, skills, and turning points behind people who make things happen. Hosted by Scott Montgomery, author of How Did You Get Here? Lessons of Unconventional Success, business owner and ICF certified leadership coach, alongside Linda Misegadis, a seasoned expert in business strategy, leadership development, and career transformation. Together, they bring sharp insights, real-world experience, and powerful storytelling to every episode. Listeners hear authentic conversations with professionals, leaders, and changemakers who've navigated big pivots, career breakthroughs, setbacks, and new opportunities. Subscribe now and join the next evolution of the journey, because this is how you go there.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, how are you? Welcome
I'm
back.
good. Welcome back to you as well. How's it going?
Oh, I had a
How you
big
feeling?
week of travel this week. Big week
Yeah,
of
yeah.
travel. I was in
Oh,
Philadelphia. I saw my old high school friends. I saw an old high school teacher this week. My house is
kind of
still torn
fun.
up from renovations, but yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a big week, but a lot of time to think about what we're going to talk about today and all good stuff.
Yeah.
How are you doing? You traveled too, huh?
I'm good. I did. I was traveling as well, and it actually is perfect because it's what I want to talk to you about today. So, we were out. Had the opportunity to spend some time with some really amazing friends and colleagues and customers, and that. And one of the things we were talking about is that dream job that you thought you wanted when you were 20 years old, 18, 17, 18, 19, 20, even in your early 20s, what that was. And where did that go? Because none of us were in those roles at all. And so it kind of got me thinking about what happens when you're in college and you've gone to
Right.
college and you're like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to be the vice president of, whatever, or I'm going to go be this amazing whoever, and it just doesn't come about. So I'm just kind of curious, like for me, this is so stupid because I live in Colorado, but when I was in my I don't know, maybe like late teens, I wanted to be a marine biologist. Now let me tell you just
Interesting.
how silly that was. Honestly, I live in Colorado.
Where
I don't really
there's
like being
creeks and rivers
well,
there,
there
aren't
are
there?
there there are lakes, there are creeks and
Lakes.
rivers. I don't really like being in water, like,
Oh,
it's not really so, there's
there's
that.
that.
Yep, the idea of, like, breathing underwater with those apparatuses scares the heck out of me,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I can't do that, right? And so I'm like, what on earth was it that made me think that marine biology was going to be my dream job? And needless to say, I'm not a marine biologist today, so but what about you? I'm just kinda curious, like, what do you think about that whole dream job myth? And because it's a great topic for us to chat about how that impacts young people who maybe have that same kind of the myth of the dream job.
Yeah, the dream job. The dream job did not pay the bills.
No.
But I
Well, what
made
was your dream job? Like, what
right,
was it? What
right.
were you thinking about?
I think I have been fortunate to make my current situation a dream come true, but
Yeah.
I never pursued art. I wanted to be an artist when I was young. I
Wow.
really wanted to draw and follow in the footsteps of my mother, who was a professional artist.
Wow,
I'm
okay.
relatively good at design and depth
Yeah.
and all the stuff around art, but then, sports and testosterone and circumstance and life changes put that on the back burner, and it now has become a bubble of creativity. Hence, I write the book. Hence, I like
Right.
to draw. There's a couple paintings around my house, photography and the creative side, but it wasn't going to pay the bills. And I think that sort of shifted for me. But, I visited my son in Alabama last week. We talked about it in the last episode about college and,
Yeah.
how to set yourself up in relationships and being able to graduate with something. And he's changed his degree already since he was there.
Interesting. Okay.
He went in as an accountant. He wanted to be finance. He wanted to be a numbers cruncher. He wanted stock market, personal finance
Mhm.
person. I don't even know what that role's called. And he was all on board. But as he got in college, which I think is a great value to college, he saw other opportunities to engage things that were more exciting for him. So he's changed his major to entrepreneurship. Surprise,
Okay.
surprise,
Okay.
dad.
Yeah.
Dad,
Yeah.
mom and dad have our own business.
Exactly.
He also is minoring in real estate. And so he's found his interest in
Oh,
real estate, which to go full circle is probably my second dream job. I really enjoy real estate. I like
yeah.
all parts other than trying to explain to something the value of something they can't see. That's not fun. But the rest of
Right.
it I like.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's interesting on the whole shifting degree too, because I was talking to another person who is we were chatting about going to college and that, and they'd made the decision. They'd done a little community college at first, and then
Sure.
they were like, I just don't know what I want to be, and I don't want to spend all of this money to just spin, and spend and spend and
Sure.
spend type of thing. And so they put it on hold, but now they're kind of at this point where they're a little bit older and they're like, I think I want to go back to school because now I have a better idea of what it is that I want to do. Plus, they're going to spend their own money. And so, you put a little bit more thought behind that. But it did kind of make me scratch my head a little bit. You hear about, people who take that kind of off year between high school and
Mhm,
college.
mhm,
And
mhm.
parents are always fearful of that, right? Because we're like, oh my gosh, if they take the time off, they're probably never going to go to school. And so, but I was thinking about that because how often do you get into school, whatever school it is, whether it's, 4 year, community college, trade, or whatever it is, where you think that that's what your dream was, but then you get in there and you're like, I don't even like this at all.
What's nice about college too, and I was coming up for me when you were saying what you were saying about your friend making that assessment is that college, and we were supposed to have a guest this week. We were going to talk about what it's like to get out your first job. And this is a good sort of segue into that still potential. We do that later. But I think it's important that college is also the introductory coursework to the topic. So
Interesting. Okay.
for me, I always appreciated when they brought in real-time stories in the
Yeah.
classroom, or they brought in real-time experience. It often is very different than what you're
Yeah.
learning in the textbook. But the basics, going to college to learn the basics and to sort of segue into a new career path, you better like that, because if it's at that level that you don't, it's only going to
Yeah.
get worse because it's probably considerably different than what you're teaching in class.
Yeah.
And so
Very
that's what
true.
right? So then the real world experience that, again, we thought we would bring in someone this week and talk about it, but I think it's important to recognize that the real work is always often different than the coursework as well.
A
And
thousand percent. Yeah.
yeah, and so that coursework, if you can't even fathom that, no joy in that and continuing down that path. And I think for me, who didn't go to college in a conventional timeline, it's about the the gift that I got is the one I'm dancing in right now, which is to say I was more fluid in real world experience and
Yeah.
managed to bring in relationships and partnerships and goals and work towards actionable, implementable, needed criteria in the real world versus coursework
Sure.
classroom study that introduced it.
Yeah. No,
It's
it's a
what it
good
feels like.
point. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, because like, as you and I mean, I didn't go to college and I didn't go to college even in the traditional time frame. So, I know you've gone back recently and actually finished out your degree. So congrats on that for sure.
Thank you. Thank
For
you.
me, I always used to joke and say, I got my PhD in the School of Hard Knocks, and not that I would recommend that that's the best course of action either. But what I will say is, I took classes here and there along the way. I'm a constant learner, so I'm always taking some type of class or reading a book. book. But what I did learn in all of that is that exactly what you said. When I took some college accounting courses to help me in some work that I was doing, what I learned there was not at all what I was doing.
Right.
The different applications of accounting, right? Because I did oil and gas, I did lots of different types of accounting that they didn't teach me in those textbooks. But what I will say is exactly what you were bringing up there is it's that practical experience, right? Because what is benefited me today in the role that I have is that I took advantage of working in lots of different industries. So I
Right.
worked in
Right.
almost every industry out there, and it has made me more well-rounded in being able to think. But yeah, again, not that I recommend that course of action. I think there are easier ways to do that, especially for young people who, or even whatever age you are, who have decided to kind of move into going into college, but don't get stuck on that dream job, because what's going to happen when that all falls apart? So you put forth this, you're like all in, you're going for it, and then all of a sudden, now you graduated from college and you're like, okay, I'm going to go get that dream job. And it doesn't happen.
With over a decade of experience, WorldGate LLC is your trusted partner in IT staffing, project management, and UKG solutions tailored for the public sector. We help government agencies and organizations navigate complex technology landscapes, implement effective workforce solutions, and build high-performing teams. From strategic staffing to seamless systems integrations, we bring the experience and reliability to execute, empower, and exceed for our customers. Staffing? Check. Project management? Check. Public sector and UKG solutions? Check. Experience you can trust. Visit www.worldgatellc.com today. It doesn't happen, and
Yeah.
it often is about getting the job at all, is about the networks that you've made at the college.
So true.
It's about how you present yourself. I know we ended last episode on talking about how you should never, ever go into that first dream job or any job interview thinking because you've had introductory coursework on a topic that you're
Yes,
ready to tell them how you're going to run their organization, because there is
absolutely.
no doubt about it that it's different. What you're demonstrating by having gone to college is the plethora of experiences you can dance in, try this on,
Yeah.
try that on, and building your network and relationships. And it's
Yes.
so going after that dream job is really about going after the evolution of the right fit for you and the people you
Right.
surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
That's
Well, and
what I think
without
it
those
is.
experiences, I totally agree. And, without those experiences, along the way, how do you really know, right? So it's
Right.
like I would have never thought my younger self that I would be doing podcasting today, right? But I have really come into my own in getting comfortable with the idea of really being able to talk and be open and be vulnerable in that. But
Mhm.
that took years of, working through that and the experiences and the opportunities that I opened myself up to allow me to be here to feel comfortable enough to have these types of conversations. But if I would have come out saying, I'm gonna, not that we were doing podcasting, when back
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
30 some
yeah,
years
yeah.
ago, but
Podcast.
let's pretend they were. If I would have said that was my dream, I think I would have been I would not have achieved that dream. And then what would I have done? Would I have, folded into myself? Because I think, I wonder sometimes with the mental health crisis that we're seeing in young people today, is some of that tied to unrealistic expectations that either they're setting for themselves or maybe their parents are setting for them or what they're seeing about from their friends. So, you've got your son is in college. You've been out there a few times and even had some conversations with some of his friends and some of the students there. What are your thoughts around that? Because, I mean, that can really be incredibly detrimental to a young person.
I think that the opportunity to assess what your dream job could look like really comes down to understanding that it's not a job that is your dream. It is the
Oh, good point.
it
Love
is
that.
the fulfillment of what it is you want to deliver to the world that you can get the most
Yeah.
bank for, right?
I like that. That's such a profound every once in a while, you just shock me with your wisdom. Just saying, that is such a good the dream is not the job, right? That is
Right.
not I love that you just said that.
It's
Good.
not the job, it's the dream, and I'll
Yeah.
firsthand experience on that for me, when I was younger and didn't have a degree and thought I had to work differently or harder or in a different capacity, I surrounded myself with fantastic relationships that we've talked about
Yeah,
on the
yes.
podcast. People that
Absolutely.
I worked for then work for me now, and they're running our training and our education departments here at WorldGate, and, all of those relationships were so important to me, but when I was getting promoted
Mhm.
into what I would call the abyss,
Yes.
but some would call a dream job,
Right, yes.
I was mentally suffering on leaving my social family, my business family who had brought and developed me from nothing, a high school diploma, into a job where the job was the relationships and the delivery was our customers were happy and we all sang from the same sheet of music. So
Right.
to leave that to go into what was a dream job promotion, which I
Right.
now call the abyss. What the hell I
Uh-huh.
was going into, I have no idea. And to be able to share that with kids or juniors or in college or junior college people who are moving into the real world, there is no dream job. It's,
Right. Yep.
it's got its warts, it's got its fight, and what I'm trying to say is I remember the mental anguish that I had in just trying to give myself the promotion by leaving the people I
Yeah.
worked with, and that was mentally handicapping me. So I feel like if a college kid were to relate, when they graduate, it's going to be a sad day. They're leaving that current social sphere and
Mhm.
network into the abyss that some people would say, "Well, I've got my dream job." But I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's still the abyss.
That is so true.
And it comes down to relationships and what value you want to bring to the world. And that's to your point earlier about being a continual learner. It is an ever evolving process.
That's a
To
really good well, no, go finish your thought, I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. I was just going to say it's an ever evolving process of. I would have never guessed a year and a half ago without you, I would have ever done a podcast because I would have talked about it. It would have trended differently. And now here I am. And quite frankly, I left this in sort of a huff last year, not at you or anyone, but at myself.
Yeah.
And now I'm back going, this has got real value and I'm really excited about it. And it's become a dream portion of my job. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
no, I totally
And
do. Well,
it's
yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
it's
I
based
love
on
that, yes.
relationships and family. So I think I just can't overemphasize for people. You're going to get an education. It is not going to be your ticket. Please don't have the arrogance that you think you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Even if you get a job related to the schoolwork you've had, it will be different. So the notion of a dream job is the notion of self-satisfaction and fulfillment in what you want to
Yeah.
bring the world, right?
I love that. I think that's a really good way to frame that because if you think about, we talked about it in our last episode around core competencies, like identifying what are your core strengths. So,
Right. What do you
if
bring?
you are, yeah, what do you bring? If you're really great at certain things, then you can start to look at that and then you can figure out where do I apply those core competencies, right? And so if you're really good at, figuring out puzzles and putting things together, you might be excellent at strategy, right? You might be a good
Right.
strategist because you're someone who can see all the pieces and how, but you may not be thinking about that, right? Because you're
Right.
like, that may not enter into your mind thinking that you could do that type of a role because that wasn't your dream. You were just thinking about. So maybe I love what you said there. Instead of focusing in on where do I want to get, it's how do I wanna go to get where I'm trying to be, right? Which is I think, I'll give you a shameless plug here on how do you
Oh,
go there. Oh,
oh
yeah,
my
right, I
God.
know.
What is that
I
is
have this
beautiful.
workbook, right, that,
Yes.
that I would really
Thank you.
encourage people you're welcome. I would really encourage
Logan, we need that clip.
people
It's going out on social media.
That's right. I'm plugging it,
Yes.
because I think it's kind of breaking it back down to how do you go there instead of how do you get there, because it's
Right.
kind of taking it back to the steps and identifying, like, those things that we were just talking about. relationships, network, understanding your core competencies, and kind of really
Self-prophecy.
breaking it self-prophecy.
Well, you said
Exactly,
something
yeah.
a minute ago that I'll go back to where you're headed right now, which is to say you talked about taking a strategy class, for example, right, at college.
Yeah. Yep.
So I took the strategy class. Well, think about this. You're going to take that strategy class in the name of your dream job to be a strategic advisor at Deloitte, whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
How about instead you say, I really like to engage with people. I'm more of a leader. I think I'd be a really good professor. And now that I've had a strategy class, that aligns me to a teaching degree on
Yes.
strategy. And now
Absolutely.
you've found your dream job.
Yes. That I love that.
It's
Yeah.
not just about the money, and it's also you have no idea before you went to college that teaching could end up being your dream job. Hence, I had no
Yes.
idea I would be on here when I jumped into the abyss on a promotion and left all these
Right.
important things behind that were my version of college.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Familiar work environment. So it's the notion of a dream job is an interesting thing I didn't think we would go after, quite frankly,
Yeah.
because I don't know that there is such a thing. I think it's
Yeah.
self-prophecy and fulfillment. And then if and my dream is to have money, then I'm not going to sacrifice being a low-paying strategic advisor. I
Right.
have to then pivot to make to balance my desire to have money with how much money is enough to sell off some of my self-fulfillment. And then that becomes
Right.
your dream job.
That is true. Well, and I think to your point there on, like if my dream or my it's really what is my goal? If my goal is that I
Right.
wanna be rich, right?
Good. Yes.
How am I gonna back into being rich then? I better build a plan
Right.
around how that is, and that's not gonna involve my because it's very likely I may have to not work my dream job. I might have to work jobs I hate if I really want to achieve, this in order to get there. If my end goal is I wanna be rich. Now, if my end goal is I want to, I wanna help others, I wanna serve my community, I wanna do that,
Well,
like, that is
know
fulfilling
thyself.
to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
find
exactly.
thyself.
Yeah,
Find
figure
thyself
out
in
what is my
college.
goal, right?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right. I
yeah.
mean, there's also a really good, I don't know if you know this, but you plugged it a minute ago, a workbook
Oh, I love
exercise
that.
option for
Yeah.
goals. But
Well,
to
and I
your
love that you did it so simple though, Scott. I mean, I think that that's the hardest part about goals. Think about when you were working for companies and they're like, put your goals together with no guidance or framework around it. It's like, how do you create goals? And I think you have put that into a really simple framework that,
I appreciate that.
anyone can
Yeah.
kind of walk through that because it's important to do.
Well, and I like joking with you about plug, and I think it's important we keep it sort of light. But I think what we're rolling around in here is that word dream job against really being set your goals to take
Yes.
you to a place that may be unexpected,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
becomes your dream job. Because what I do for
Absolutely.
WorldGate, what I'm doing with you, and what I'm learning out there in the world has become that artistry I'm not tapping into when I thought I wanted to be
Yes.
an artist 100 years ago.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. Well, and honestly, once I got over realizing that I would be a terrible marine biologist, I started to realize my other thing that I really thought about doing was international business. I have a real, like, I'm very interested in the whole idea of it's the business aspect of it to me, but it's the strategy, it's the idea, it's coming up with all of that. And all of those things, I didn't know this then because I didn't figure out what my goal was. I didn't do any of the things that we're trying to lay the path for in
Right, for
in
the
what
people
you've done,
listening
right?
and our
For the
viewers.
people who are
Well,
listening. I
what
didn't
we're
do any
doing
of that.
here. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
that's
And
a really
so
valid, put a pin in that, because I think that's really
yeah.
valid that people understand that what we're trying to describe in our conversation, not to steal that, but I sit up in my chair because this
Yeah.
is really important for our listeners, and the purpose of what we're doing in the workbooks and everything is to carve out this path of
Yes.
open field. So
Absolutely.
right? And if you can pay
Yes.
attention to that, it's not about the degree or the what you think you've learned. It's
No,
about where you're self-fulfilled and where you can grow because it never stops. So what was that
exactly.
second job you didn't take? The international business?
Well,
Yeah.
so I thought international business. Now, funny thing today, again, I didn't set a goal or put anything in there. But what I didn't realize is that I was probably just doing this subconsciously. Is that
Mhm.
in each of the roles that I did have, I learned a little bit more. I developed more relationships. I learned about international payroll. I learned how to, function in some of those areas which is now like in my role today has because of all of those different pieces like I would say today what I get to do I can't even explain what I do today
Right.
because it's so multifaceted but it's so
Yeah.
fun it's because I was able to take all those things that I really love and I've had the opportunity but I created this path. I mean, this is not the job I applied
You
for,
created
right?
this path.
I
Let's hear that
created
out
this
loud.
path.
You created this
Yes.
path. You used guidebooks. You used podcasts.
Yes.
You used something other than your ego having had a piece of paper
Yes.
at the end of your degree. That couldn't be more of an emphasis for what we're doing than in this dialogue.
Yeah. That's
Especially
it.
when
Yep.
especially when you think you're talking to kids that the smart ones are asking me questions that are related to this, and the arrogant
Yeah,
ones are asking me related to what does the industry pay with someone with this degree. They're
that's it.
different.
Exactly. Very
And
different. Yeah.
and I think defining that is really more important about the dream job aspect.
Yeah.
I want to go back even further when you mentioned about that gap year when people take it between high school and college.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm actually encouraging all of my kids, take the
Mhm.
gap year when you graduate college
Yeah.
because while you had a choice not to go to college, and that might have gotten in the way if you took a gap year that created experience and
Yes.
a trajectory to your personal goals, leaving college will allow you to see the real world and will create that trajectory because there's no backdrop. You're not living at home. So you're going to
Absolutely.
be forced to
Yeah.
make a decision and you're going to be equipped to do it. And
Yeah.
so
No, it's a really
in those
good
college
point.
years, you could still live at home until you're 22, and parents don't really get that separation. But I think it's
Yeah.
really important you go find your dream. You go find your dream job through experiences. Thanks for listening to How You Go There podcast. If this sparks something for you, share it, review it, or connect with us at howyougothere.com. Keep leading, and we'll see you next time.